I am what I have discovered I'm a nomad. We lived on the West Coast, the East Coast, and now I'm Mid Atlantic. So I like moving around a lot. I also like the work I'm doing. I work for the Ribbon Consulting Group. It is a business venture with Linda H. Scruggs, and we primarily focus on providing training and technical assistance to organizations who are doing their darnest to serve people with chronic health conditions, workforce issues, and HIV. My family is in Albany, New York, New Jersey, and Atlanta, and I'm the second eldest of seven children, the oldest daughter. I have a son who's 35. I often don't talk about my personal aspects of my life, but I think it's probably important here because we're going to be talking about an important issue, and they're a part of that. And I've been living with HIV for 32 years, and I am just grateful to be here and to be able to be with you this afternoon. It didn't for a long time because I was more concerned about myself being diagnosed in 1990, but misdiagnosed in 1988. I was diagnosed the last year in attendance at Temple Law School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So my whole sole focus was how am I going to live after I realized I wasn't going to die. So, you know, in a way, for all, like as myself, as a woman of African descent, the prison is always a step away in the sense that, I had four brothers. Um, and, growing up, we're just normal teenagers. The folks do things that can get you potentially in trouble. But it didn't dawn on me that it would lead to something more serious, as we're seeing as I started paying more attention in my later years as to what was going on around me. So it didn't really intersect until my son, who in his mid late 20s started having interactions with the police. And also, I need to take one step back even further. When he left home because he didn't want to go to school anymore, and I was strict about school. I really felt like education was the key to the advancement of Black people. I'm not sure if I feel that way anymore. I still believe education is important, but I don't believe that education is going to bring about this equality that we're all talking about. It's so much bigger than that. So when he didn't want to go to school, I was like, well, you can't live here. So then that meant he lived with his friends and on the street. And so I was always worried that he might be confronted in that manner, being a young Black man. He made some decisions in his life about how he was going to live his life, and eventually it caught up with him. It was probably the most terrifying call I ever got when he called me and said, I am up in Amsterdam. They've picked me up. I'm going to be up there. Um, and we couldn't get to him in time before they shackled him, put him in an unmarked van, drove him from New York to Houston, Texas. We didn't know where he was in this country for 3 days because this van was picking up people along the way. And that's my first interaction. It's an interaction on two fronts. One, because our family has, as all families, have suffered through a series of traumatic events, and some of our responses had led to his being uh, involved in the criminal justice system. But also, it was just nothing. You can't prepare for it. So, in terms of the intersection with HIV, by that time we started talking about intersectionality, and I really started reading Dr. Crenshaw's analysis around intersectionality and learning what all that means and how his issues were interconnected with my issues. And that gave me the opening to be able to start having some really important conversations with him about how he was living his life and how myself as a mother could help him. Like, for example, there was not much we could do in Houston from New York. I mean, He had to have people down there post his bail because we couldn't post it. Um, when he ended up having to serve time, yeah, we could give him money in a commissary and we could talk to him toll call, but he had to pay monthly fines. So I ended up having to pay his fines even while he was incarcerated so they wouldn't give him more time. So it was just a very strange, I thought it was a very strange situation. I didn't understand that you had to pay to be in jail. I did not understand that concept. I mean, we pay on a level anyway, but to actually you have to pay cash money. I didn't get this at all. So that was my introduction to how direct introduction as to how the criminal justice system can impact an individual and then impact the family of that individual. I will just say that the family was just scared. We just hoped that he made it out of Houston, and he did. You know, he served his 2 years. Part of it was incarcerated, and part of it was paper. But he couldn't leave Houston for 2 years. In the past, I would have said, I'm torn between multiracial movements and Black people first movements. So at this state, I believe that coalition work will come. We have to, Black folks have to have the space to determine what it is they want and what it is they need and how they want to get it. And then we become part of a coalition. And because we're talking about us, if it's about us, we should be leading that coalition. And I think that we have to start informing folks that support us, funders that want to fund this work, that they must understand that this is a movement, especially around Black Lives Matter, that this is a movement where Black people have to lead this time. Because, and when we do lead, I think about the civil rights movement. I think about every major movement in this country. We have had a profound impact on that movement, and in particular, civil rights movement. Yes, other communities joined us, but it was Black people at the first and forefront of that movement. And we organized ourselves, and then other people joined. I think it's the same thing here. And folks have to understand it's not anti-white as opposed to anti-Blackness. Because I truly believe that Black folks are in their minds, we don't have the luxury of hating white people. I mean, we may not like them, we may not like what they do, but we don't have that luxury where I often wonder, how is it that you develop this sense of deep well hate? I mean, you sitting around thinking about stuff that maybe you should spend that time doing something else. We don't have that luxury. So in coalition efforts, I'm not trying to assuage your your guilt or shame about what you feel your people may have done to my people. That's no, I don't want to do that. You got to go do your own work. I started thinking about the fact that the control of Black bodies had led to mass incarceration. And the title of the presentation is that mass incarceration um, is just another name for slavery for Black people in America. So slavery by another name, that's what it was called, the mass incarceration of Black people in America. So we went from, and it's all based on white supremacy and anti-Blackness being the roots of state-sponsored structural violence. And so the taking of bodies is violence. And so as I almost feel it's like a thread. It's like we went from slaves, and then we were free, and then we went back into some quasi form of slavery during after Reconstruction in the Jim Crow era, because we never had that full equality. So we were still working for what people would call quote unquote slave wages, which was almost like none. Okay. And then you come into another period of time where we break through, and we all are always breaking through. And then we are at the point of civil rights with Martin Luther King and all the men and women that were part of that movement, but it wasn't the delivery or the freedom we were expecting. What we were offered in return was welfare and low paying wage jobs, which, if you live in a capitalist society, is another form of slavery. Because you can never make it to the point where you can be free and really operate the way you want to operate your life, because you're now bound to a job which requires you to be there in order for you to make your rent and make your food and all that other stuff. But there's no extra. There's no extra. So you can't do anything else. And now think about it, in this day and age, those us that work those low pay wage jobs is what's keeping this country going. And if you look at the thread, has been us that has been part of that significant part of the labor force that has enabled this country to gain the riches that it has. But it did ever trickle down. You remember the trickle down politics? We were supposed to have all that, but that didn't work. And in there, when we talk about incarceration and it being a form of slavery, just think about the fact that some men and women who are working in the prison system get $1 a day. $1 a day. It might be more now, but at the time we were talking about, it was $1 a day, $2 a day. That's slavery. I want to say two things to folks who are really involved in this struggle. I'm not as involved in the struggle for criminal reform as much as I would like to be, but we're all in a struggle to somehow be liberated. So the two things I want to tell people is that the addiction to power is a hard habit to break, and that old regimes die hard. And as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a fight. So we are going to be in a fight for our lives, more so than we've ever been. But it's a fight worth winning. It's a fight worth fighting, because white supremacy is not a birthright. It's not a birthright. There's people that said that this is what they want, but that we have to internalize that message that was given to us, that white is right. No, it's not a birthright. That is what I would like to leave people, and that we are all born under the same sun and are entitled to the same rights as anybody on the face of this earth, regardless of your situation or station in life. And that we should fight for our human rights. And another thing I would leave as a message is that we have got, when whatever happens in the elections, that we have to fight for human rights. And a lot of people think that the United States supports human rights, but it does not. It has not ratified a number of human rights treaties that also has to do with mass incarceration. Because if we signed those human rights treaties, we would have to do something about what's going on in our prison system. That's what I want to leave the message with. That we continued our fight and we don't give up, even when we're tired. Because I know sometimes we get tired. But that's why we have to learn how to do this in waves. We have the first wave go, and then when that wave gets tired, we step back. It's like the geese and the birds, or the flight of the geese. The geese is in the forefront, and when they get tired, somebody takes over. And that's how we have to start sustaining our movements, because sometimes we move and feel like we have achieved, and then we stop. We relax, not realizing we still got to keep it going. So I'm hoping that we also learn that lesson too.